Welcome to another episode of the GSI Briefing. I'm Audrey Lane, President of Garden State Initiative. On today's episode, I'm excited to be joined by Danielle Zanzalari, PhD, and an Assistant Professor of Economics at Seton Hall University, and E.J. McMahon, Adjunct Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research and founding Senior Fellow of the Empire Center for Public Policy. GSI was proud to partner with Danielle and E.J. on our most recent report entitled Alternative Benefit Plans, a Smarter Retirement Plan for New Jersey Teachers and Taxpayers. This is a passion project for me, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And that's a testament to the hard work of both EJ and Danielle and their incisive analysis. The report drives home the point that both teachers and the state will benefit from teacher pension options. In fact, if given the choice, newly hired teachers are highly likely to veer away from the current defined benefit plan option and instead opt for an ABP in search of better flexibility and portability. The evidence is clear from case studies in other states, and there's no reason New Jersey should continue to dig in its heels and resist moving toward a more modern, flexible, and fiscally responsible approach. So without further ado, welcome Danielle and EJ to our podcast.
Thanks for having me here today, Audrey.
Thank you very much, Audrey.
Let's get started. You were both clear in the report that the failure to act on teacher pension reform could have some dire consequences, such as exacerbating the historic teacher shortage and continued underfunding of teacher pensions and worsening of New Jersey's already deeply troubled fiscal outlook. Danielle, why don't you start us off and tell our listeners why you believe these consequences are unavoidable without reform?
So the problem for the current teacher's pension plan, which is the defined benefit plan, is that the state has overestimated the return rate assumptions and have massively underfunded the plan for years. Currently, the pension is only funded around 40%. Only since 2022 has the state started to pay the required employer contributions. In fiscal year 2024, that was $4.1 billion, and 85% of that money was earmarked for past pension debt. This does nothing to help our fiscal outlook for the state, nor encourage new teachers to join. But do you know what could? Giving teachers a second retirement option, a defined contribution plan, like other higher ed educators in the state, such as Rutgers and Montclair University have, and like many private businesses do. We should also give that same plan to our primary and secondary teachers. It's better because the vesting period is lower, not 30 years to break even. It allows participants a choice. Teachers can leave for family reasons or move and not lose their retirement benefits. They could also pass along their entire savings to a beneficiary if they die before retiring, which they cannot do in the current system. It is also safer because the state must contribute to the teacher's retirement each paycheck, leading teachers not to worry about their retirement. It's a win for taxpayers. It's a win for teachers. Who doesn't want a choice, and why don't legislators want a better fiscal outlook?
Thank you for that, Danielle. And I think the report really speaks to all of those points, and worth diving into that when all of our listeners have a chance. So EJ, as Danielle noted in her comments, we have the most underfunded teacher pension system in the country at about 42%. What do you say to the critics who would suggest that moving away from a defined benefit plan would only increase the problem? You do concede in the report that costs could rise in the short term, but why is an ABP the right long-term move?
Well, the size of the problem, that is the immense debt that the state has built up by not making full contributions to the teacher pension fund, runs into many billions and billions of dollars, and is going to take decades to dig out fully from. In the short term, if you were to switch tomorrow, every new hire to a defined contribution plan like the higher ed ABP plan, you would there'd be a small impact on contributions to the current plan, because for the simple reason that the employee contribution to the higher ed style plan is lower and the employer contribution is higher. And so you would see less money coming into the underfunded teacher plan, but the difference would be only a matter of a few $1,000,000. What it would do is it would basically contain the problem that you now have. It wouldn't make the pension debt any worse at all. It would simply shift the cash flow from new employees away from the old plan to the new plan, to the extent they opted into it if it was optional. So it doesn't make the problem any worse by any stretch of the imagination. It simply actually makes the nature of the problem clearer, which is that the state didn't fund the defined benefit pension plan, and that there's a debt there that has to be paid off one way or another.
Right. Thank you for that, EJ. And the next question I'm going to open to both of you. This speaks to the mindset of young adults considering the teaching profession and why they're taking a pass on this profession. How much would retirement portability and removing the burden of a 30-year buy-in help teaching districts throughout New Jersey be more competitive? At the start of this school year, we had about 120 to 150 open teaching spots. We were short teachers this year and continued to be in that position. So how do you think this would help our teacher market be more competitive when we're trying to attract the best and brightest next generation of teachers?
So most of the younger generation does not stay in the same job, place, or career for 30 years. A pension system, however, sort of requires it. Otherwise, financially, the teacher will be worse off. Allowing retirement portability makes it much easier for smart young people to enter the teaching profession without feeling locked in. Maybe family obligations change, like having children, caring for a sickly parent, or maybe they desire to move to a different state or a spouse takes a job in a different state. Under the current system, this would not financially benefit them at all. Whereas a defined contribution plan allows flexibility for individuals to still make money for their retirement, but take it with them. They don't have to work for 30 years like the current pension system. Moreover, if someone knows they want to be a teacher forever and want to stay for 30 or 40 years, they could still opt into a pension. We are not advocating for getting rid of the pension, but allowing teachers an option or a choice that some people might still value. Research simply shows that when you offer a choice to teachers beyond the traditional pension plan or traditional defined benefit plan, teachers overwhelmingly like the flexibility and the assuredness of the on-time payments by their employer, the state.
Yes. I think that I could second that wholeheartedly. And I think that there's no question that the classic traditional defined benefit pension plan, such as the one that's the only one available now to teachers, it's actually geared to rewarding longevity. And it actually rewards longevity at the expense of people who don't work their whole careers. And there's actually always been a lot of drift out of the teaching profession for a long time. There are people who leave before they fully vest in the traditional pension. There's also a great deal of mobility. And last but not least, the teaching profession has always been particularly attractive to women who may take a break from teaching full time in order to have and raise children. And all of those situations basically don't benefit as much from the current pension plan. So, for instance, a teacher's hired since 2011 in New Jersey. They need 30 years to essentially break even on the combination of employee contributions and employer contributions that add up to the pension benefit offered under the defined benefit plan. Well, over half of the people who enter the teaching profession will not work 30 years. In fact, a fairly sizable share of that number will leave before 5 to 10 to 15 years. So the system really is geared toward financing maximum benefits for the minority who work the longest period of time. This system, it's a system based on what's, again, been used in higher ed throughout the country, public and private sector higher ed, as well as the 401k type plans that are available in the private sector, actually offers a considerably better deal to would-be teachers or current teachers who prize portability and who prize flexibility in their career plans. There's just no question about it, and we illustrate that in the report.
This next question is open to either one of you as well. And in the report, you talk about the hypothetical situation of a young teacher in the Lenape Regional School District in Burlington County. You talk about how she'd benefit from the option of an AABP, when a life event, and in this case, her husband taking another job out of state and precipitating move. According to your math, after 7 years in the TPAF, this teacher would have been 3 years short of vesting, but entitled to withdraw $30,038 in total pre-tax contributions. And this is at the 7.5% rate of her salary. However, if she'd been enrolled in the ABP during that same period, she would have accumulated $66,561 in a personal retirement account by the time she left the New Jersey teaching job. And that's more than twice as much. Can you explain this difference to our audience?
Well, here's something that may seem like a paradox until you consider why it's true. If you're an employee and you're in the current pension plan, as you noted, you have to contribute 7.5% of your salary annually. If this same employee had been in the ABP plan, the defined contribution plan that's available to higher ed, public university and college employees in Jersey, you contribute less, only 5% a month. So initially, over the period we measured here, the employee would contribute $20,000 to the defined contribution plan, but $30,000 to the defined benefit plan, and yet they'd emerge with more. Why?
Right.
Because of that longevity feature I mentioned, the employee's contribution, the junior employee's contribution in their early years is actually financing the system for everybody. And because the system assumes that there will be a large rate of separation from teaching before vesting, and it prefers to keep the money that the employer has contributed. That is, your employer, ultimately the state of New Jersey, is contributing money also to your pension plan. But if you leave before vesting, before 10 years, that money is kept in the system for people who have stayed in the system. You don't get it. If you, however, have your own defined contribution plan, after just 1 year, you own a retirement savings account that has in it all the money that's been contributed on your behalf. So what you have then again is you've got $66,000 invested savings that is both from your contribution and the employer's contribution, and that's with built up investment gains. What I did, and when we did this comparison, we took the actual return on annuity accounts managed by TIAA-CREF, which is one of the major provider of defined contribution plans for higher ed employees. This was based on the actual experience of an actual TIAA-CREF popular plan between 2013 and 2020. And the actual returns produced by that plan, with all the ups and downs in the markets during that period and everything else, anybody who was in that plan in that period, the contributions totaled $52,000, just nominally. The actual the actual savings and compounded gains in the plan added up to $66,000, almost $67,000 by the end of that period. And that employee who was in that plan after those 7 or 8 years could basically leave with that money, owning that retirement account. Let's say you're staying in teaching, but your spouse moved to Ohio, and you're moving to Ohio with him or her, and you're going to take another job there where you have to enter another plan or another type of teaching job. If you were in the traditional pension plan, you just get back nominally what you put in, $20,000, period. If you're in this plan, you get back the full plan with the gain from investments. You've got $66,000 in a nest egg that you can take with you. That's clearly a much better situation for anybody who thinks that they want to have any kind of mobility, or again, to use another example, somebody, a young woman who's going to take time off now to have children and to be at home with the kids for a few years. Same thing. If you stop and you think I may stop for good, I think maybe I'll actually go into another profession. I'm going back to get my degree in something else. You've got this nest egg that can't be taken away from you, as opposed to this sort of nominal amount that the state almost grudgingly gives back to you before you vest. There's no question that this is better for someone who's not working up to the vesting point.
EJ, that was a great explanation. Simply, the current system requires a 10-year vesting period, meaning any state contributions are lost if you leave the profession in under 10 years. With a defined contribution plan, however, the vesting period is much lower, in about 1, 2, or 3 years. You can walk away with your contribution and the state's contribution to your next job. It is a much better situation for anybody that desires a little bit of portability and flexibility, which I think most people want.
And just to reiterate, they would walk away with this with really no increased burden on the state finances, correct?
That's correct, because what's the state? It's because it's a different system. The defined benefit plan, the whole of the financing and the actuarial assumptions behind a defined benefit plan is in part built on the assumption that a whole lot of people will get into it but leave before they vest, or leave before they vest in much of a benefit. And that in effect that the contributions made for those people will actually finance the benefits for those who stay. The whole plan is meant to work that way. The numbers work out if you make the required contribution, which the state hasn't been doing or hadn't done for years. That's a whole other problem. But that plan clearly, there's just no question that's not in the interest of the employee. There's one other aspect of this that we can touch on. Defined contribution plans have a bad name because in the private sector, many defined contribution plans offered by employers in the private sector are frankly lousy. They're not very well funded. They have low employer or no employer match of an employee's savings. They require the employee to get involved in making complicated investment decisions, et cetera. That's not the type of plan that we're talking about here. The typical plans, such as those managed by TIAA, CREF, and there are other competitors that are in this business, they tend to steer you into an annuity-based investment portfolio that is meant to help you build savings to produce a guaranteed income at the time of retirement, if that's what you prefer. And they're very well funded. They're very secure. They're not producing volatile results that put people at risk of not having savings at the end of their working life. This is the creme de la creme of defined contribution plans. It's really first class. So people who base what they hear based on somebody's sort of piddling IRA at a small business or 401k that's been abandoned by some bankrupt employer, that's not what this is like. This is a really good plan.
And I think it's worth underscoring that point that this is, as you say, the creme de la creme of plans, and we wouldn't want anything less for our teachers.
No, it's really good.
The creme de la creme plan is the ABP plan. We're offering it
Right.
currently to our higher ed teachers. Why are we not offering that same plan to our primary and secondary school teachers? The ABP is already a defined contribution plan that exists in place. There's a lot of legwork behind it. This is not asking the state to start fresh, as EJ mentioned. There's also a lot of states doing plans like this. We could do that too.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. I appreciate the additional detail on that. And all of this that you're laying out, I'm sure it's been very informative for our audience, which I hope are both teachers and taxpayers. So last questions for me as we wrap this up. And a lot of people are really skeptical about the potential for teacher pension reform. But even the governor's own task force on public school staff shortages recommended re-examining our current pension system to combat this teacher shortage. So is there hope? Do you think that we can get somewhere?
I am always hopeful that the state can fix the pension system and teacher shortage. I try not to focus too much on the politics and stick to the economics. And when we think about the economics here, it should be pretty clear to the state legislature, Governor Murphy, the teachers union, that this is in the best interest for teachers and taxpayers. When we think about economics, this just makes the most sense.
Thank you. And EJ, do you want to wrap up with the last word here?
Well, I think, and again, I again seconding what Danielle just said. And experience in other states shows that when you offer people entering the teaching profession an option, a large percentage of them will choose a plan like the ABP plan that is offered to higher ed employees in New Jersey and similar plans in other states. In fact, in higher ed, it's an option in most states, and vast majorities of college faculty choose such a plan. It's really win-win, because you're the problem, the teacher pension funding problem in New Jersey, which people are used to hearing about. It is what it is. It's good. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem. It's not going to go away. And it's going to take decades. It's a hole that's going to take decades to dig out of. There's no avoiding that. But if you if you shift attention to what the governor's task force has recognized, which is the urgent importance of attracting more people to the teaching profession, which is undeniably a priority, there's no question that offering a well-funded, flexible retirement plan to people entering the profession, or by the way, and also people who are considering entering the profession in mid-career. Somebody
Absolutely.
who may have a job, especially in highly technical professions, people who may be better qualified to teach, or exceptionally well qualified to teach scientific, science or math. There's no question that it's an attractive proposition, and experience has shown in states that do it, it does attract people. They do choose it. So it really is win-win from that standpoint as well, because it doesn't make the current problem worse. It's a problem. But when you shift to saying, how can we attract more people to the profession? I don't think there's any question, from everything we know, that this is more attractive. Offering the choice is absolutely more attractive.
Absolutely. And the report really lays out that entire case. So thank you both for your time today and for your time on the report. I can't wait to collaborate with both of you again.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you very much, Audrey.